So, Thomas and the Magic Railroad. That was quite the thing to happen to the show, wasn't it? As we all know, the film flopped hard in the box office. And regardless of how the general audience felt about it, for better or worse, it would become a permanent stain on the rest of the show moving forward. As due to the film's failure, Britt Allcroft was forced to step down as deputy chairman of her own company and sell the show's rights to Hit Entertainment 2 years later. And we all know how it went from there. The show went on its 9-season-long decline until Mattel came into the picture in 2012. But we're not onto that just yet, as we are now into what would be considered to be the 2 seasons of what many would call the Ghislaine era. Well, whilst I could kinda see that in terms of quality, I still consider season 6 and 7 as part of the classic series. It still has the same composers, same runtime, same director, yada yada yada, you get the picture. So in this video, I want to take a deep dive into why these 2 seasons, while still good, are definitely a decline from the first 5 seasons. So, buckle up, as we dive into the newly named Ghislaine Entertainment owned seasons. Season 6 is, interestingly, the only one of the 2 Ghislaine era seasons to be solely produced by Ghislaine until the hit buyout, as production wrapped up in March 2002, and Hit distributed the entire season. And right away, it's easy to see that, compared to the last season and the failure of the movie, the quality really started to take a turn. Nothing too noticeable yet, but things started to get a little childish in the writing department. This is in fact the first season to have a slew of writers instead of Britt and David writing everything. And you can tell that because a new team was involved, inconsistencies started to show. Not that I have a problem with the new writers. I mean, I think it's good to have various writers coming up with new story ideas for the show. But it's a problem when they're not that familiar with the franchise. According to story writer Avi Grant, apparently production on this season was a show, as 15 of the 26 written scripts were complete before filming began. Man, I could only imagine what production on this season was like back in 2001. Let's get the obvious elephant in the room out of the way with, and it's something that people like ThomasFan261 nitpicks about a lot, and that is the visuals. Just what on earth happened with the visuals this season? They look so ugly. Look, I get it. The look's not going to look as grand as the film, but don't cheap out like this, for crying out loud. I mean, come on, Ghislaine. And of course, another thing this season struggled with was the characters. Granted, some of them mostly stayed the same, like Gordon, James, and especially Thomas. But some of them just felt off, particularly Percy. While he did have a few gems this season, particularly in episodes like A Bad Day for Harold and Percy's Chocolate Crunch, this was the point where he started to become the dumb one of the main cast, especially with him questioning the characters most of the time.
What's a demonstration?
Demonstration, said Thomas.
Dingy-fried, puzzled Percy. What's that?
Dignified, Gordon corrected.
On a positive note though, the music is still just as great as it was in season 5. Still got the similar motifs from that season, but with some new themes sprinkled here and there. The songs are quite mixed this time though. You get some great ones like James the Really Splendid Engine and Never 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 Give Up. But then you get songs like Boo Boo Choo Choo that, while still alright, still feels kind of off. The new characters this season definitely fit into the universe very well. Salty is the best new character this season, hands down, and he acts as a great foil for Cranky.
Ahoy there, Cranky, cried Salty. Where have you been? Snapped Cranky. And a good day to you too, Captain.
That's the SpongeBob and Squidward of Thomas for you, folks. This was something that the CGI series played with a lot later on, and No Sleep for Cranky was the start of it. Harvey is also a good newbie this season, but like others, he wouldn't become a great and fleshed out character until the Bread era years later. Elizabeth is also a fun and neat addition, and adds some lore into the Fat Controller's history. That was neat. And do I even need to say anything about the pack? They are just stellar additions to the show, and their props are outstanding. And the two-part story they appeared in are definitely some of the season's best episodes in my opinion. The narration this time though, varies in quality. Michael Angelis' narration this season is absolutely phenomenal. I don't know what microphone Ghislaine used, but I'm all for his outstanding narration this season. Even in two of the worst episodes this season, he still gives it his all.
Help! Cried Percy. I'm not a truck. Poor Bill. He works, he suffers, while Ben, his twin, gets brand new buffers.
Alec Baldwin, on the other hand, f***ing hell. What happened here? Look, I understand that the divorce with Kim Basinger was hard, but if you compare his narration to Angelis's, it's night and day.
Hello, James, muttered Percy icily.
Scary Jack Frost, cried James, and he raced away as fast as his wheels could carry him. He didn't stop until he got back to the sheds.
Hello, James, muttered Percy icily. Scary Jack Frost, cried James, and he raced away as fast as his wheels could carry him. He didn't stop until he got back to the sheds.
And now for the episodes themselves. To say that some of the episodes this season felt a bit off would be an understatement. You get the confusing writing decisions made in episodes like Harvey to the Rescue, and especially Edward the Very Useful Engine, where characters just act differently for the sake of plot. And then you get episodes like Bufferball, the Rusty Saves the Day, and especially Middle Engine, where it's just pure trash. But you do get episodes where you remember them fondly after you just watched them. Some of my personal favourites are No Sleep for Cranky, Percy's Chocolate Crunch, Jack Jumps In, A Friend in Need, Toby Had a Little Lamb, James and the Red Balloon, Gordon Takes a Tumble, and especially Thomas and the Jet Engine, purely because an unrealistic concept is taken in a very funny and enjoyable thrill ride. Angelis' narration is at its peak, and you can't help but laugh at moments like this one.
Want a race, Thomas? Beat Bertie? Never mind.
So, Season 6 is definitely a step down in quality compared to the first 5 seasons, and as a result, it's easily the worst of the classic series. It's still a really good season, and I won't go as far to say that it's the worst of the show. We'll get there, guys. Don't worry. But you could definitely tell that things were starting to take a turn. Would I recommend this season? Absolutely. But it's your choice whether or not you want to watch this season. And now let's see if Season 7 ended the classic era on a positive note, and if things have improved since the previous season. I am happy to say that Season 7 is a notable step up from Season 6. Obviously nothing compared to the first 5 seasons, God no. But there are some things in it that make it better than Season 6. The most noticeable of these improvements compared to Season 6 is the visuals. They look so much better than the lighting in the last season. The colours pop more, and the sceneries are nice to look at times. I especially like this shot right here from episodes like A Bad Day at Castle Lock and Peace and Quiet. But they're still nothing compared to the visuals of Seasons 3 or 5. Speaking of older seasons, this season uses the biggest amount of stock footage in the entire series. Probably above or right next to Season 15's overusage of stock footage. It's pretty neat seeing older footage used from time to time, even adding some digital effects to not just the new footage, but the older footage. Though it can be a bit awkward at times, like this stock footage scene of Peter Sam and his old funnel in episodes like Bulgy Rides Again. And especially this transitional shot in Not So Hasty Puddings. That might just be the worst usage of stock footage in this season, at least to me. The music from Micah Jr. is also great. For being their final season as composers, they went out swinging. Their music for this season is all new. Granted, there are some familiar motifs from the last season like always, but for the most part, it's all new, and I appreciate that. And Robert Hartshorn's rescores he did are, admittedly, not too bad. There are some nice little pieces here and there that I can appreciate. The sing-along songs, though, did leave something to be desired. But for being the last ones to come out of the classic era, they aren't too bad. Some of my favorites are Salty, The Red Balloon, and Troublesome Trucks. So I definitely prefer the Adventure Begins version of that song. The episode quality as well are also a notable step up, for the most part, as, unlike previous seasons, this season is more of a everybody gets a lead role type of season, unless you're the obvious. The character selection is a lot more varied, which I like. Something that I even experimented in with the first season of my upcoming series. It's getting there, guys. Don't worry. It's getting there. Speaking of characters, there's still a bit of a mixed bag. While I love how most of the old characters get at least some spotlight like the new characters from the previous season, and even returning characters like Bulgy, it doesn't help with some characters being inconsistent. The biggest example being Skarloey, being completely out of character in the old bridge because you all know why. Granted, it's not as bad as it was in the Hit era, but it's still jarring. There are some other characters too being inconsistent, like Thomas and Percy being complete dicks to Henry in What's the Matter with Henry, and Duncan not trusting Diesels in Trusty Rusty. But aside from those, most of the characters are quite consistent this time around. And the 5 newbies this season are also standouts, with cool designs and unique personalities. Emily is a kind, caring, and sometimes motherly figure to characters like Thomas, Henry, and Percy. Spencer is easily the best newbie this season with his cool design and his pompous character, and the fact that we have a real rivalry between him and Gordon that would continue until the near end of the show, and the rest are neat additions. Not much else to say there. And while on the topic of episodes, Season 7 has quite a few great episodes this time around. Some of my personal favourites being Emily's New Coaches, Percy Gets It Right, James and the Queen of Sodor, Bad Day at Castle Lock, The Refreshment Lady's Tea Shop, Toby's Windmill, Salty Stormy Tale, Something Fishy, Bulgy Rides Again, Gordon and Spencer, and the final ever episode of the classic era, and my personal favourite from this season, 3 Cheers for Thomas. Purely because it feels like a great cap-off to Thomas's journey across the classic series. And finally, we have the narration. This time, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Michelangelis starts to lose his charisma, but he's still enjoyable to listen to this season. He goes for a more calm tone to his narration style, which I do like. It makes this season quite calming compared to Season 6. Makes it almost feel like Season 1 in a way. And since this was aired alongside Season 8 in the US, this was the first full-on season to be narrated by Michael Brandon, who would narrate the show up until Season 16. His narration honestly leaves me kind of conflicted. On the one hand, I kinda like the energy he has whilst reading the stories. But on the other hand, he just gives the characters some very, and I mean very weird voices. Those can be overlooked though, for what is an average at best narrator. So, as a whole, Season 7 is what I like to call a calming and tranquil season before the start of what would be a long decline for the show in terms of quality. But it is for sure a notable step up from Season 6, from its nice set, calming narration, fun newbies, great score for the UK dub, and nearly everyone gets a chance to shine in terms of episodes. For better or for worse, depending on who you are. Season 7 is far from perfect, but it is a nice ending to a great and iconic era of the show. And that was it for Classic Thomas. Or so we thought. During production of Season 6, a plan for a spin-off series focusing on a team of construction vehicles was in development. And a soft pilot was worked into Season 6, in the form of Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need. Both of these episodes were the start of what would become a full-fledged 26-episode spin-off series about these wonderful construction vehicles. Only tragedy struck last minute. As when Hit Entertainment bought the rights to the show, they initially cancelled the spin-off for two reasons. One for being proved to be too expensive to produce, and another for it being similar to Bob the Builder, their already existing construction-based series, which, for the latter, I could understand. After all, Bob the Builder was a massive hit back in the day. So much so that the main theme song hit #1 in the UK charts at Christmas in 2000, beating out Westlife of all bands. Man, who'd have thought a Cartoon Builder's theme song would beat out a Westlife song of all things? However, because all the props were built and ready to go, Hit made some changes in order for the thing to be made. One was cutting 13 of the planned 26 episodes, and making some changes in order to incorporate Thomas elements into it. The biggest was incorporating Thomas and Percy into every episode's plot in some way, shape or form, and having their names in some of the episode's titles even if they didn't have that much involvement in the episodes. The spin-off was filmed alongside Season 7 as planned, but whilst Season 7 came out as per usual, there was no sign of the spin-off anywhere, so it was easy to say that it was either on hold or it was silently cancelled. Until 2006, when Hit decided to release all 13 episodes onto home media during the release period of Season 10. And as a result, we were treated to this wonderful spin-off series, now titled Jack and the Sodor Construction Company. Let me just say right away that I adore the props for the construction vehicles. These aren't just like the Gauge 1 props we've come to know over the years. These models had to be bigger than normal to accommodate the moving parts. And the characters themselves are very likable here. Max and Monty are definitely the standouts here besides Oliver. Their banter with each other is just so funny to watch, and they have some very humorous dialogue.
You jumped the signal, grumbled Monty. Did not, snapped Max. Ow, cried Max, you've dented me. You're in the way, snapped Monty. I came second, cried Max. Third, snapped Monty. I'm the most important, snapped Max. I am, blasted Monty.
It's no wonder why Andrew Brenner brought them back in a later season, not to mention giving them a banger of an episode in Season 20. The sets themselves, since they're larger than usual, are chocked with detail, which is something that I can really appreciate. Another thing that I can appreciate is the score. This is our first full production with Robert Hartshorn as exclusively the composer, and I gotta say, I really like his music. Of course, nothing will ever beat Michael Jr.'s music, but his music is still really good to listen to, especially here. I quite like his arrangement for the Pax theme here. It's so jazzy and upbeat, which makes sense given the context behind everything. I have nothing to say on the sing-along songs here. One Friendly Family and the Work song are just fine. Not bad, just fine. The narration, on the other hand, damn! Michelangelos finally woke up. He suddenly has energy here. Which is interesting, considering that this was released during Season 10, where he didn't have that much energy there. So it's interesting to hear him with this much energy. Not much to comment on Michael Brandon's narration though, unfortunately. He's more or less the same as he was in Season 7. He's a little bit more enthusiastic though, as he was for that season though, so that's something, I guess. And now for the episodes. Let's just get the obvious out of the way and address something that is many people's biggest issue with this series, and that is Thomas and Percy's presence in every single episode. I'm honestly kind of conflicted on this, though I can kind of see why it's a huge problem with this series. A gentle reminder would be just fine, but them being present in every single episode just feels like a forced reminder. So yeah, not a fan of this element whatsoever. But that doesn't affect the episode quality here, as I quite enjoyed most of the episodes in this series. Some of my personal favourites being A Happy Day for Percy, A Tale for Thomas, Alpheus Kittens, and especially Thomas's Trusty Friends. Purely for the spectacular crash sequence, something that I don't think would be done the same way if it was CGI. Huge props to the model crew for making this as spectacular as it was. So, in conclusion, the Jack and the Pack spin-off is a caliber above the 2 seasons that I've covered for this video, with amazing model work, fun characters, fun narration, and cool music. But why did I decide to cover this last minute? Well, because this was filmed alongside Season 7, I figured I'd include it. Since this does take place after or maybe during said season this was produced with. A great and fun little spin-off without a doubt. And that is it. We have now covered the first 7 seasons of the show, plus the spin-off series it was produced in. And tomorrow, we are going to finally step into an all-new era. An era that isn't all that great. With a season that I absolutely despise. But we'll get there. Buckle up, folks. It's gonna be one heck of an adventure.